There are 4 parts to the test. Part 1. You will hear a talk given by a woman who is a successful climber. For questions 1 to 10, complete the sentences.
People often ask me when I was first bitten by the climbing bug. Well, it happened when, as a journalist, I accompanied an Anglo-American expedition on Everest's northeast ridge in 1989. I went there with no intention other than to write about other people climbing the mountain. I wanted to see what made mountaineers tick, why they gave up jobs and left their families just to climb a hill. Over the couple of months I spent with the expedition, I began to understand the sense of freedom and achievement of mountaineering and did lots of learning and exploration. I think they were the happiest 2 months of my life. Over the next 3.5 years, I honed my newly acquired climbing skills on various mountains all over the world. People say, weren't your family surprised by this new interest? Well, they weren't, because I'd already done numerous other, what people like to call adventure sports, like hang gliding and scuba diving. Anyway, in 1993, my hobby got completely out of hand. I gave up my job, let out my flat, and joined the British Everest expedition. To prepare physically for it, I trained at my local gym. The mental preparation, however, was much more difficult. There were lots of things that frightened me about Everest. One of them was the ice fall that you have to climb through. A friend asked if there was any way I could prepare myself for it. I thought, what can I do? Put myself in a fridge and look at lumps of ice? Everest is certainly not a place for cowards, and it's also certainly not a place for life's luxuries. You don't carry anything that isn't necessary because weight multiplies at high altitudes. The first time I went to Everest, as a journalist, I carried my perfume all the way. I soon realised that it was unnecessary. You can forget baths and showers on a mountain as well. I didn't even take my toothbrush higher than 7,000 metres. It's not through uncleanliness or laziness that you don't wash. It's through sheer practicality. The only source of water is melted snow. To melt snow, you need fuel. And fuel is heavy, so you don't melt snow unless you're going to drink it. The question I'm asked most often is, how did you feel when you reached the summit? Well, I still get emotional when I think about it. It was fabulous, because neither of the 2 Sherpas with me had been to the top before either. There was this tremendous feeling of shared excitement. Since then, I've gone on to climb a number of other summits, and I plan to tackle Mount Fuji later this year. And, of course, I've got my new career in TV as a presenter on Tomorrow's World. I'm in demand on the lecturing circuit, and my book about my ascent of Everest, On Top of the World, is a bestseller. So that's my story. Now, does anybody have any questions?
That is the end of Part 1. Part 2. You will hear a radio music presenter talking about his job. For questions 11 to 19, complete the sentences.
I'd always wanted to work in radio, but at first I didn't imagine it as a full-time career. After I got my engineering degree at university, I decided to go into industry. I think the experience gained outside radio has been to my advantage, so I have no regrets about doing engineering or about working for a short time in industry. And during that period, I got my first taste of broadcasting, working for a hospital radio station. The work was excellent training. I decided I wanted to become a music presenter professionally while I was doing that, and sent out hundreds of letters and audition tapes, which were all met with rejection. My advice to anyone trying to get into radio is to keep at it. There are bound to be moments of despair as the rejection letters pour in, but determination is the only way to succeed. Competition for music presenters' jobs is extremely tough. There are thousands of would-be disc jockeys around the country. Anyway, eventually one station offered me a series of training sessions. As a result of these training sessions, I landed myself a part-time job on an overnight programme. Then I was offered some holiday relief work, which I managed to fit in with my holiday from my full-time job. A few months later, I was offered a full-time presenter's job, which I took. There's no such thing as a typical day in radio. My schedule depends on how many programmes I'm responsible for in any one week. Generally, I have a 3-hour afternoon programme 6 days a week. I usually arrive at 9:30 and spend the first hour opening mail. I get a lot of mail and I have to make arrangements for it to be answered. Then I concentrate on the content of that afternoon's programme. When I've decided on the content, I plan the running order. After lunch, I usually spend the time before going on air scanning the music press. I often find interesting stories I can use on the programme in the music press. Sometimes in this period before my programme begins, I record advertisements for the station. My programme runs from 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. When it's all over, I clear away the records and usually set off home by 6:30 p.m.
That is the end of Part 2. Part 3. You will hear part of an interview with someone who founded a magazine. For questions 20 to 25, choose the correct answer A, B, C or D.
OK, welcome back to the programme. Well, for the 100,000 or more people in London who buy every issue, Time Out is an invaluable guide to what's going on in the city. In its lists they can find everything from films, plays, concerts and nightclubs to exhibitions, sports, opera, dance and special events. And I'm talking now to Tony Elliott, the man who started it all, back in 1968. Tony, what gave you the idea?
Well, back then it was very hard to find out about those things. There were magazines. There was a magazine called What's On, which was a weekly, which is still around, rather kind of conventional in its approach. And you could look in the evening paper, or you could look in the music press, to get information. But nothing covered everything all in one place. So I perceived there was a gap, and I suppose, well, to some extent, I just produced a magazine for myself. And it turned out a lot of other people wanted the same thing.
At first, the magazine was just a sheet sold hand-to-hand in the street, wasn't it?
Well, I started with a few like-minded people, and we did actually put it into newsagents. People do seem to think we started as a bunch of idealistic amateurs. But I have to say that I think we were actually pretty professional from day one. It was coming out every 3 weeks, so I'd spend 3 or 4 days actually going round something like 300 newsagents. The selling in the street was partly to do with getting copies sold so that we actually had some cash. But it also had this kind of inbuilt market research thing, where you'd show people what you were doing and they go, "Oh, really?" And a lot of people said, "Oh, that's a modern What's On. That's what we've been looking for."
So, did you have any publishing experience before this?
I did a regular column for a magazine at university, which was quite serious. It used to do single themes per issue, like provincial theatre or education or racialism. And then when I took it over, I promptly changed it into being a kind of a contemporary arts magazine. We did interviews with artists, rock stars, writers, people like that.
Were you still at university when you started Time Out?
Yeah. Technically, I was actually on holiday for the summer vacation, and as far as the university was concerned, I was supposed to be going to France to teach. I think I told them I would do, because, you go away for a term or a year if you're studying French, and, then I just started doing the magazine.
And you didn't go back?
Yes, well, there was a point when I suddenly realised that I was doing what I wanted to do.
So it soon took off, didn't it? I mean, it was monthly first, and then it went weekly, didn't it, in a very short time?
Well, it started monthly, and then we went 3 weekly. For some reason, that was the highest frequency we could do. Then we went fortnightly, which is quite a valid frequency for publication, and then inevitably we went weekly. Stimulated, I have to say, by the threat of some competition from some people who were starting a similar publication.
Oh, yes, I was going to say, someone else must have spotted the gap. I mean, you identified it, but there must have been big publishing houses who thought, oh, hang on, we can have some of this too.
Yeah, I think the truth is nobody really realised what the significance of the magazine was, because, well, in a sense, it started very tiny, very small, and then built up, and a lot of publishers and a lot of advertisers also were very, dismissive of our readers. I mean, still, even today, you get occasional accusations like, it's not a particularly significant readership, and a lot of students read it, don't they? Things like that. People just didn't realise that, we were creating a readership that was very significant.
The readership's grown up with you as well, hasn't it? A lot of people, I imagine, who were buying it as students in the 60s are now buying it as parents of teenage children these days.
Oh, well, that would imply our readership's now older, which isn't the case. And although the numbers have expanded, but it's true that there are more people over 35 buying it than there were when it started, the readership hasn't really changed. It's still basically intelligent young people who do things.
OK, well, we'll take a quick break now, and then I'll be back to talk to Tony some more.
That is the end of part 3. Now look at the fourth and last part of the test. Part 4 consists of 2 tasks. You will hear 5 short extracts in which different people are talking about things that have recently happened at work. Look at Task 1. For questions 26 to 30, match the extracts with the situations listed A to H. Now look at Task 2. For questions 31 to 35, match the extracts with the feeling each speaker expresses, listed A to H. Speaker 1.
So, the head of department called me in and launched into this long speech about how my messing up the arrangements for his meeting had created all sorts of trouble for him. While he was going on about it, I glanced at the bit of paper in front of him and I saw the signature, and I realised it hadn't been me. I knew it wasn't like me anyway. I mean, I get things wrong, but only trivial things. It's going to be hilarious when he realises what a fool he's made of himself. I doubt I'll be able to keep a straight face.
Speaker 2.
Yeah, I was busy and the area manager turned up. Well, I wasn't exactly thrilled to see him. It's hardly ever good news. Anyway, he wanted me to start on some other project. I'd been warned that was coming, so I didn't have much trouble coming up with reasons for turning it down. He said I'd regret it later, but I said I didn't think so, and he left it at that. The thing is, after all these years with the firm, all I get asked to do are the things no one else fancies. It's really got me down. I joined with such high hopes, and now I'm so disheartened. It's such a shame.
Speaker 3.
The ridiculous thing is, I'd always known she couldn't be trusted, but it's in my nature, I guess, to speak my mind. Still, I shouldn't have confided in her what I really thought of the job. It's just that, when she asked me, it caught me unawares. It's got me into a lot of trouble now, because of course she spread it round everyone else. I should just laugh it off, but that's easier said than done. She'd better not come near me for a while. The way I feel, I'd give her a piece of my mind. It infuriates me when people do that kind of thing.
Speaker 4.
Jack came to my office today. We used to get on really well till they moved him upstairs, and I hardly see him now. And he said, "Hey, there's an opening in our office now. I've fixed it so you can have it." Well, I didn't know what to say. It came right out of the blue. I mean, he's always done me favours and been kind to me, but I can't think of anything worse than working there. So I feel awful about letting him down after all he's done for me. But I'm going to turn it down because it's my career, isn't it?
Speaker 5.
Well, I tried to be my usual tactful self, but he took offence. "So you can't bear to come on this trip with me?" he asked. And I said, "It's not that. It's just that I've been to so many conferences lately, I want a break from them." And he said, "But this is the most important of the lot. Don't be so stupid." Pff, if I'd reacted to that, we'd have had an enormous row, so I didn't bother. That's the sort of thing that tends to happen with him. He's either all over you, or he can't stand you. That's just the way it is. I won't let it bother me. What would be the point? There's nothing I can do about it.
That is the end of part 4. That is the end of the test.